I'm Al, and this is my lean friend, John Bicheno. And today we're going to talk about habits. Got any bad habits, John?
Plenty.
Is that for another day?
I think for another day.
Okay,
Quite a few other days, I think.
Oh, a whole series of bad habits with John. I can't wait. So we're not going to talk about bad habits today. What we're going to talk about is how habits form and forming good habits. So John, last time we talked about Toyota Carter and the habit of scientific thinking and approach. So today we're going to talk about how habits form and how those things fit together. So what books are we looking at?
Well, first of all, I think, as we said last time, I think Mike Roth had done a fantastic job on bringing Toyota Carter to the attention of the lean community. And what Carter is really all about is really establishing the habit of scientific approach or scientific management. But then there's been quite a number of books, some of which we'll talk about today, which deal specifically with creating habits. So I think it's that these are mutually reinforcing, and using them together could be highly beneficial.
Yeah. So I think especially when we're at work, we sort of do things, and the Carter bit is lining everybody up so that we're all doing the same thing at the same time and in a routine, isn't it? So can you talk a little bit about what the basis are of that sort of thinking and routine bit in terms of habit?
Well, I think first of all, I think this is linked in with the idea of small wins, which is another big theme, really. So the small wins, small gains. So you want to establish the idea of habits on a route becoming routine, and there's small wins taking place. This is Kaizen, really. So small wins for the better, small gains for the better. And I think one of the points that I liked about that talked about in one of these books called Atomic Habits really points out the differences between regular small wins over an extended period, generating an exponential sort of curve, as opposed to a linear expectation, which I think a lot of management has, is that improvement will just be linear, just go ahead and so on. But in fact, more realistic is that small wins lead to an exponential curve. But here's the thing, is that exponential curve by its very nature is incredibly flat in early days. So it looks as if no progress is being made whatsoever. But
and that can often make people a little bit impatient and are you on the right path? Are we doing the right things because we haven't seen any results yet?
Yeah, that's right. So you're laying the foundation, but not very apparent. And so I think that's an important message in general for a lot of managements. These two books that we're going to talk about, one is Charles Duhigg's book called The Power of Habit, and the other one is Atomic Habits by James Clear. I think these are absolutely compatible books. So the one by Charles Duhigg talks about the cue routine reward. So cues cue up the sequence. So if you're doing like a Carter routine, maybe you have a meeting every morning or whatever the case. So that's the cue that sets up the and then what the routine is all about is essentially the 5 steps that you go through on these various Carter things. And then, but what's spoken about very much, but what is nicely spoken about in some of these books is the reward sequence, which might be intrinsic or extrinsic rewards.
Yep.
And so I think that's a very important thing. I think we all have these kind of cue, routine, reward things. Example, putting your seatbelt on when you get in a car. So you get in the car, that's the cue.
Yes.
And then the routine is you put in the seatbelt.
Yeah.
And then then the reward is that you feel a bit more comfortable. And in fact, I think it's the situation with many of us that if you get in a car and there's no seatbelt, you're thinking, what's going on here? There's something missing. And that's because you developed the habit.
Yeah, and there's an expectation there, then, isn't it, that you're gonna go through that leap.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And then just talk about it a little bit. So we talked previously about the deliberate practice of doing that to get that into like a routine or a habit then.
Yeah. So I think that's also a very good point that's been made here, is that it's not just routine, it's practice, but it's deliberate practice. So by that means that, and again, I think that fits in very nicely with a kata story, is with kata having foundations in karate or whatever. So in early days in karate, you're learning your katas, but you're not just doing a sequence, you're actually being told what you're doing wrong and what you're doing right. So it's deliberate practice. I do quite a lot of swimming. But if you just swim up and down in the lane, well, it doesn't make any difference. So you should occasionally get somebody to tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. Otherwise, you're just not going to improve. So
so that's the part of it as well. So it's the routine of doing it, and then the deliberate practice of getting it right, and that's when the coaching bit comes in with kata.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I think these what I like about Atomic Habits is they talk about these four stages. So the first, or four laws, if you like. The first one, make it obvious. Second, make it attractive. Third, make it easy. And fourth, make it satisfying. Yeah, so making it obvious is really that, like we talked about, you have a little routine or a cue that sets up an expectation in your brain, really, that to carry out a kata review session or whatever. Then making it attractive is building in some sort of good way to do it. So the routine, and then making it easy. I think this is something that I think we've all experienced this one. Like, well, in my case, if I leave, if there's sweets around in my kitchen, I'll eat them. So well, so if you want to lose weight or whatever, just make sure that they aren't around. So that's that's make it easy to do. Or the converse, inversion of the third law. Make it difficult.
Make it difficult. Yeah. So I say at work, could we put the cakes in the cupboard, because they're kind of quite easy to pick up on the way fast.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
And I think this is a really good framework. And whenever you put anything in it, it's kind of making it enough of that so that it's harder to go back to what you did before. And I think humans, it is kind of, you will do the easiest thing. So if you make something new harder than you did before, then people are going to drift back, aren't they?
Yeah.
So you've got to try and look at what is the easiest way to do it, and then the previous way you did it is hard. So actually, you can get people to sort of migrate quicker into doing that, I think.
Yeah. So there's in the book Atomic Habits, it talks about there's a graph which is like a concave curve, which is about repetitions against establishing the habit. So what it talks about is in early days, it's quite difficult so that's difficulty against repetition. So in early days, quite difficult to actually, to make progress. And then if you do more and more repetitions, if you like, or more and more practice, it becomes easier. And eventually, if you do it sufficiently, then you might go through the habit line, if you like, which means that then it really becomes a habit, and then
you kind of don't you don't know, you're not as conscious of doing that, are you?
And I think that also fits in again with Mike Rother, but also fits in with Kahneman's story about System 1 and System 2 thinking. So System 1 thinking, it's your default, if you like. So how to convert that System 1 to, how do you make System 2 more...
the thinking...
deep thinking,
more routine, and into System 1 so that we don't notice it.
I think these are sort of valuable lessons. These books are written for the general audience, not for Lean in particular, but I think they've got a lot to be said for.
Really good fit, I think. Yes, certainly.
And I do think that if managers took this bit more conscientiously, I think it would be a great step forward. Charles Duhigg has got the nice little example about this, the cue routine reward story about what happens at Starbucks. So what happens if somebody complains at Starbucks? It's not the guy, no, well, we just kind of sort the guy out and tell him he's rubbish. Or instead of doing that, you establish a little routine, appropriately called latte. So what's latte? Number one, listen. Okay. Secondly, acknowledge. Say that you've got something legitimate that you can. And then thirdly, take action or thank. Take action and thank are the next two. So very important to thank a person for bringing it to your attention. This is part of the learning experience. And then finally, explain. I think explain is a great way of creating a good customer service. So, that your complaint is taken seriously and what we're going to do about it. That's really good feedback. In fact, that's the feedback loop, which is so powerful.
And that's a really good sort of standardization of approach as well, isn't it? And that you're going to get the same response wherever you go with that, which is...
And that leads on to, maybe TWI, job instruction. Yes. So how about that? So, why not make that part of the habit formation in service? That would be interesting.
That would be really good. Yeah. Should we go to Starbucks then and get a coffee and
let's go
and complain?
Let's go and complain.
Okay, thank you, John.